And the topic this week is mental health, depression, eating disorders and support for young people. Just see the agenda. So the first speaker is Matthew Walsham, Research and Campaigns Lead for Partnership for Young London. And he's going to be talking about mapping Young London, a view into young Londoners after a year in lockdown. Then we'll have time for questions and answers. And after that, Katrina Scott is going to be talking about Cherish Hounslow and the work they do around the topic to support the BAME community. So Matthew, are you able to share your screen, show your slides? Stop my screen share.
Sorry, before Matthew begins, could I ask everyone to turn off their microphones unless you're participating and chatting? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name's Matthew Walsham. I'm the Policy and Campaigns Lead at Partnership for Young London. We're an independent charity in the Regional Youth Unit for London, set up in 1997. We basically did a report which you can find online called Mapping Young Londoners. I'm going to kind of go into the background about what it is and how it came about, some of the key data points, and actually I'm going to go into some of the data, especially around mental health and well-being. So firstly, to note, this report was a partnership with a range of organisations. We wanted to kind of collaborate with as many organisations that work with young people, both regionally and nationally, kind of looking at what they've been finding about young people in lockdown in the previous 2 years, but also some of the solutions and some of the things that they've been doing to combat it. Topics-wise, there's quite a few topics. We kind of tried to go over a little bit of everything. We did it in a participatory approach where we had a key group of young people that met at the very beginning, and they kind of looked at what questions should be asked around each subject. The subjects itself were selected by a previous piece of research we did with the Museum of London, with a sample of about 3,400, and it was basically the key priorities for young people in London. So in terms of sample, the Mapping Young Londoners, we had about 1,700 young people, which is a miracle considering it was lockdown 3 and I think everyone was sick to death, including us, of anything online. And the survey took 20 minutes to do. So considering that, 1,700 was quite a few, and we got quite a lot of young people giving us lots and lots of information. In terms of sample data, we tried to match it as closely as possible to Key Stage 2 and 3. And the average age was about 19, and otherwise it was fairly kind of really diverse, more diverse than most surveys that we've had. I think the data there's a little bit out of date. I think Asian was slightly higher represented in the end. I think the only thing that was hugely underrepresented, if you use the government's ethnicity data, was white other. Otherwise, I think we had an overrepresentation of Asian Black young people in the end. In terms of additional survey data, 3 kind of reports to highlight. One, the Museum of London Life and Gen Z report, which also touches on mental health and space and place with over 3,000 young Londoners. Free transport report, which looks at the impact of transport and specifically free transport in London, especially on education, work and health. And then political identities research was another piece we did around how young people view their identity and the implications that has for their well-being. I'm going to go over a couple of key data points, and then actually, because I thought the focus of this was something different, I'm actually going to go onto the report and then go through the mental health stuff in more detail. So also, additionally, we did 7 focus groups over 35 young Londoners, trying to get insight into groups that we knew sort of survey accessibility might be an issue, especially 20 minutes. So care experience, refugees and migrants, English accessibility issues. And this is where we partnered with those organisations to kind of do that in a meaningful way. So I'm going to quickly go on to issues. In terms of the main issues, mental and physical health came third, housing and employment came first and second. you know, partly this was because it was lockdown, people are staying in homes and thinking about their futures, and probably I think housing became a bit of a conduit for many things. When we explored housing and focus groups, we found that housing actually, you know, kind of could have come into mental and physical health. It became a kind of lightning rod for them, being stuck indoors, feeling anxious, not getting enough exercise. And actually, even the different issues that young Londoners thought were the most important completely changed depending on ethnicity, gender, and age as well. So this idea of a single top 3 issues homogenously for all Londoners, you know, is not really the case. The thing I will say, though, mental and physical health is sort of the most important, even though it comes third on the most important on average. It consistently, we also ask the other question, what's the least important issue for young Londoners? And mental and physical health by far across all groups was sort of the lowest. So, you know, young people may only put it third in their most important, but they're the least likely to say that it's the least important. So if you kind of do the averages, it, you know, it's the key one that comes out across all groups. We will look at the lockdown during, in terms of exercising family and friends, spending more time online. Nothing hugely surprising here. More time online, less time exercising, far less time seeing friends and family. And this also varied between different ethnicities and gender. We looked at government lockdown and social distancing rules. We found the majority of young people do follow social distancing and lockdown rules, but they overwhelmingly, kind of 80%, have a bad or very bad opinion of the government's response to COVID-19. This was in the Christmas period after January. We also looked at satisfaction with housing, you know, no big surprise there, but specifically we were interested on the impact of lockdown and COVID-19 on housing. But actually, a third of young people said that COVID had impacted their housing situation. You know, it disproportionately impacted older young people, care experienced young people, disabled young people. And it was a range from having to move out, from not being able to afford rent anymore, not being able to live with their friends, or having to move back in with their parents, and the subsequent sort of mental health issues that they said that kind of rose for them, gave them. Similarly, we looked at employment plans as well. Over half of young people we surveyed found that their future employment plans had changed as a result of COVID. And that, again, was different for multiples of groups. I'm going to go a little bit into the mental health stuff a bit more in detail. We had a whole chapter on mental health, and what we decided to use is the World Health Organization's 5-point scale. So just kind of rating it and do an aggregate score to kind of say how young people are feeling in their well-being at the time. I think the thing that was shocking for us, that's the score breakdown. So the score was, you add up all the scores and it's out of 100. And we found that a majority, sort of 70% of young people, scored less than 50%, which clinical data says that a score of less than 50% indicates sort of low well-being. But more worryingly, there's clinical evidence to suggest that a score of under 28% is indicative of depression. And as you can see, over 34% of young people scored less than 24%. So kind of really strong sample evidence around, you know, the extent of the mental health crisis happening for young people in London. I'm going to go a little bit, I've got stuff on placing the police, but actually let me go into the report itself, because I didn't put all of the mental health stuff in there. So the first thing to note is 80% said that COVID-19 and lockdown had a negative impact on their mental health, with less than 1 in 10 saying that it had not. This kind of makes sense. We asked in more detail in focus groups, and it was a range from housing, but actual just general anxiety about feeling sick, their family getting sick, worrying about elder relatives was a large one as well. And also for young people in transitional ages, going on to higher education or sixth form, they were worried about their future as well. What it's going to do about their exams and education was a huge one. And we've also done research subsequently about digital online learning, the exhaustion of that, and the lack of being able to separate learning and online to kind of personal at-home life. Forgive this, but I think the bit that might be really interesting if we talk about mental health is the accessing mental health services. We wanted to kind of test the kind of information stuff. So, you know, ask them, I know where to get support for my mental health. Still kind of just less than half, 48% said that they kind of agreed that they know where to get mental health. Only 1 in 10 said they just did not. But generally, you know, information, it's not perfect. You know, I still think about 40% kind of disagree that they know where to get support for. When we ask where do they seek support for mental health, the majority are getting them from friends, followed by family, followed by their GP, school and university. And CAMHS, which we didn't just ask CAMHS, we asked CAMHS or a mental health professional, actually rated really, really low on this. You know, and this might just because of lockdown, because they think services aren't open. We heard a lot about waiting lists. But, you know, whatever reason, CAMHS was incredibly low and people still seek informal support first, friends and family, but also GP. So GP is the #1 kind of professional support that they would go to for their mental health, which we think is interesting in the terms of, you know, the pathways for young people. Last couple of slides, I'm aware of time. We asked what are the barriers of young people seeking support for their mental health. #1, very unsurprisingly, was waiting lists. Second one is COVID-19 and lockdown restrictions, which is difficult to separate because I think it's something that, you know, young people kind of thought exacerbated everything. #3 was a lack of trust with staff, then local information service. We put a desire to protect NHS in there at the time and opening hours of services. What I think is particularly interesting about this is the breakdown of ages as well. So if you look at older age groups in 22 to 25, more likely to say waiting lists or support. Younger age groups are more likely to say lack of trust with staff. So this is partly about age as they go through, but also it might be about the more experience they have with the service, the more likely they're going to put kind of more service-oriented answers around lack of information or waiting lists, rather than just kind of general perceptions about mental health care. We also asked some stuff around health eating, but I won't go into that too much. I think the last thing I'll put is around safety in the police, which is around, you know, how much do they trust police and the feelings of safety and anxiety that go into that. And we also had a whole chapter on discrimination as well. Generally, young people trust the police, and this is the last point I'll make. Generally, as a group, they are kind of mixed on whether stop and search is effective as a crime, but they are overwhelmingly in agreement that there is systematic racism within the police. So actually the experience of crime and discrimination, when we asked young people, you know, how common is discrimination, or how much they trust police, or, you know, whether stop and search is effective, young people are broadly kind of mixed on it along different ethnicities and genders. But the one thing that all young people across all groups, there was no difference, agreed with, is that there is still systematic racism in the police. Sorry, a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There's a lot there. The report covers quite a few things, but have a look at the mental health section, because I'm sure there's tons that we've missed out. And if there's anything else, just email me. I'll put my email in the chat. Trying to keep it short and sweet. Is that okay?
Wow. Matthew, that was amazing. Ian, you don't mind if I pitch in, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, go. Okay. And Matthew, we do have a bit more time. So I'm just wondering, Catriona, do you mind if Matthew perhaps takes some questions now, or should we hold that until after your presentation?
Yeah, no, that's fine to take some questions.
Because we've got a little cushion of time today, so we're hoping to add in time for everyone to chat and ask questions. And I know, Matthew, that report looked amazingly interesting, and I'm absolutely convinced there are going to be a lot of questions around that. So perhaps if there is anything in particular you want to go back to and extend on. And Catriona, sorry about that, but I think this is actually fantastically important for all of us to hear. And we've got 2 speakers today, not 4. So we've got time for both of you to do a little bit of extra work.
Perfect. No, I don't mind. I think I always end up machine gunning people with information.
Yeah, I have to say, I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, my director always says that. Okay, so I think the thing that we've got a bit more time for in terms of the well-being stuff, I think the first one around, I consider myself a healthy eater. Generally, on average, only 55% consider themselves healthy eaters. There was a lot of don't knows, and, you know, about a third had the confidence to just be like, no, I'm not healthy at all. But really interesting, again, was the breakdown between different ethnicities, with Black young people being the lowest and likely to consider themselves, but also we did self-identified class as well. So working class were far less likely, 47, 65% compared to middle class young people. And in terms of exploring why, we asked about takeaways. And again, this is during lockdown 3. And, if you look at my Deliveroo account, it's no surprise. This was probably a little bit higher than we normally would expect it. But over the half of the young people we spoke to said they got eat takeaway once a week or more, with the common single option being once a month. So, 40% at least once a month, but 56% said once a week or more. So actually, we kind of probably got the scales a little bit wrong there. There might be young people who will be eating it sort of 3, 4, 5 times a week. So it kind of took us back a little bit. So really kind of a lot there in terms of the next bit, sticking on the well-being, is around exercise as well. We try to keep the language similar to, there was a survey done by the Greater London Authority in 2009, which kind of asked some of these questions. And we basically stole a hell of a lot of questions just because we wanted a direct comparison with 10 years ago. This is the one of them that we took, which is how much physical exercise, including sports and other activities such as dance, do they get outside of school? Kind of mix there, kind of worrying that 70% said less often or never, 1 in 5 essentially getting no exercise outside of school. But once again, broken down by groups: older young people, more likely to be healthy eaters, less likely to eat takeaway, and more likely to get exercise. So kind of healthy trends in eating and exercise improve as you go up the age groups, but still we kind of have that ethnicity breakdown, where only 1 in 10 of young people said they get exercise less than 1 a week, compared to 1 in 4 Black young people. So school outside of exercise heavily depends on that. So that's the kind of breakdown as well. So young women are more likely to say that they never get it. Working class young people, Black young people as well. So that kind of exercise. I'm going to go back into the presentation then, because I think the discrimination thing is important in terms of mental health and well-being, like eating. But we asked how common discrimination in London was, and obviously different groups answered differently. And as you can see, we asked, how have you experienced discrimination? So taking it from a general idea about, is there discrimination in London, and whether they personally experienced it. And as you can see, there's a real big kind of gap. But even the biggest gap, with Black young people kind of more likely, sort of 63% versus the average was about 44%. 44% is still kind of just under half of all young Londoners at some point have experienced discrimination before the age of 25. And the average age of this survey is 19. So the youngest age was 16. So you're still kind of looking an age gap of those 4 years between 16 and 20, and already 44% of them have experienced discrimination. And this is just the ones that said that they had. We had an option that's saying they don't know, and that was used as well. So actually the ones that just said no straight out was much lower than 54%, it was sort of 30%. And the other one we asked, because it was in the news at the time, and this one came from the young people as well, which is around, do you feel comfortable wearing your natural hair at school? Which obviously is not going to be a question necessarily applicable or understandable by all young people. So obviously the average around a minority, about 14%, said that they feel uncomfortable wearing their natural hair at school. But Black young people, 34.2%. So over a third, 16 to 25 in London as well, feel uncomfortable wearing their natural hair at school. And I think we're going to be building on that. We also asked what their experience of discrimination was. And we've done this in the report, from mental health to different subjects, where we did a lot of qualitative information, and we basically just dumped all of the quotes on a page. We did some analysis of it as well, but we just thought it was important for people to read it. So we had over 600 young people share their experiences of being discriminated against, and a lot is in there about that as well. Does that sound good? Don't know how much time I've got. I could talk about COVID and digital learning as well, because obviously COVID stress was a huge amount, particularly universities transition to virtual and digital learning, majority were very dissatisfied or dissatisfied. I think it was a real cause of stress for it. And I think education, especially when you got to university level, became this kind of sort of triangulation of online learning and disruption to their learning, a lack of social life and isolation because of the housing, and then financial worries as well because the way that they paid for accommodation. So pretty much everyone who was complaining about university was actually complaining about finances or their accommodation more than anything. You know, the quality of learning was like fourth down on the list when you started to kind of dig down into it. But more importantly, sorry. And talking about preparing for the future as well. So, you know, it's kind of the young people have quite a dim view about education's ability to give them skills to have a sort of career or employment. You know, when they think about university, it's 82%. You know, most of them are largely positive, but it kind of drops down back to sort of 67% when it comes to employment, which is kind of showing the way that people feel about kind of A-levels and GCSEs and vocational studies within London, which I know with apprenticeship rates being quite low on the take-up is not surprising. Anyway, I probably should, because as you can tell, I could talk about this report all day, and you know, there's enough in there to talk about it all day, but maybe it's probably best if there are any questions and I can talk a bit more in detail about the things that people are particularly interested in.
Thanks, Matthew. I think Naz has got a question.
Hi, yes, I do. Hello, my name's Parminder. I'm from NAS, representing the Cherish Partnership. Matthew, I think probably everybody on this call is kind of blown away with some of that research. It's a really, really interesting piece of work. And it feels like it's, I mean, I can see it's a 75-page document. It feels like it's something that we need to take away and be able to really slowly digest. A question I wanted to ask was a couple of things. Who funded this piece of work? And secondly, has there been a piece of work looking at the experiences of young people during lockdown, during COVID over the last 15 months? I'm not sure what the time period was that this piece of work was done. That's been similar to this, or is this one of the largest pieces of work that's had such a breadth of questions asking young people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in terms of COVID research in the past year and a half with lockdown, there are pieces outside but by other organisations, but they've tended to focus on a particular subject. So we've been working with Healthy London Partnership, and they've done some survey work around mental health, but it's kind of small sample size stuff. I know the Prince's Trust did a COVID stuff report on mental health as well. The Prince's Trust, that's a really good one around depression and isolation, but also they've done one around employment. But generally, you know, we don't know if lockdown's ever going to end. So, you know, no one's called time on the lockdown period. So no one's gone right now let's kind of evaluate all of it, you know. So I think the trepidation with doing any research about the impact of COVID is, well, it's still going on and we don't know how it's going to change. But we did this work, it was funded, I mean, it was kind of funded by Trust for London, sort of. They funded us for other things. They funded my role for something else. They didn't really fund this piece, but we just thought with the London elections coming up, we wanted to do this for that. So we did it during the winter period, and the survey was open from just before Christmas to kind of midway through February. And the idea was to inform what the mayor was thinking in terms of services for young London. In terms of the breadth of it, you know, I think with a larger sample size, we did one with the Museum of London. That was 3,400 young people. I think that's larger in terms of how many people sort of answered it, but less breadth in terms of questions. This is kind of very much focused on COVID in lots of responses because it's hard to divorce any other question from COVID. I think the thing to note is that we are currently doing a project that's commissioned by London Borough of Merton. And that's asking 5,000 young people in the Borough of Merton just about the impact of COVID on their education, their mental health, being safe, you know, a few kind of key things from the Every Child Matters framework. So that survey has literally just gone out yesterday, which is why I'm so frayed around the edges. but that will be out in September. And even though it's just London Borough of Merton, I think the sample size is big enough that there's going to be some really, really interesting findings for all London boroughs from that, actually. It'll probably be the most comprehensive thing around COVID and young people that I know of.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Hello, yes, Matthew. Yeah, that was like a whistle-stop tour, so I'll need to like really digest each page, but that was amazing, thank you. So, you know, regarding the low participation of physical activity, did you extrapolate that it was due to any particular barrier, like cost barrier? Did you establish that within the finding?
So not within this findings, we have done subsequent work around access into not just sports clubs and exercise, but also youth clubs. I think the Museum of London report, we found that youth clubs were one of the least accessed space and place in terms of activities. Sports clubs, I think, was slightly higher. I think 1 in 10 young people said they went to youth clubs. I think 1 in 5 went to sports clubs, but still lower than, you know, arts and culture or these other things. I think and this is all kind of, you know, kind of hypothesis, it's not confirmed. But then the trend that we noticed with sports clubs was kind of obvious. It's about access. With arts and culture, for example, with the Roundhouse in North London, arts and culture, it's got music recording studios and all sorts of things. They found that a lot of the young people that went to that came from a borough away or 2 boroughs away. You know, they would travel into Camden for it. With sports clubs, when we did some work with them and looked at their attendance data, you know, majority, 80% of their young people were local. And then when we mapped it, we found that the ones that are less likely to go to sports clubs, other than all the normal stuff around gender and ethnicity, you know, Black young people far more likely, young men far more likely to go to sports clubs. It was also about location. So there are a few boroughs which I assume have less coverage or less information available, where sports activities kind of do just not register. And then you've got some boroughs where participation is much higher. I think the average is really kind of doing a disservice to the actual picture, because actually what we found is certain boroughs really high, certain boroughs really low comparatively. So I would say it's about space and place based on that, but could be any guess.
Space and place. Okay, sorry, can you just go back to the, did you say, so it was 1 in 5 attend sports clubs, and was it 1 in 10 attend like your local leisure centres? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, no, 1 in 10 is youth clubs.
1 in 10 is youth clubs, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then also, so, you know, they said about the distrust. Did you then do any survey on, for the young people, who would you trust? What organisations, you know, would it be, you know, your local trusted youth centres or sports clubs or?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we didn't test with sports clubs. We did test with youth workers, especially in subsequent research. And we found youth workers rank just about as high as CAM mental health workers, which is very low. You know, they're very unlikely to talk to youth workers about their mental health, or CAM workers. I think CAMs, I think it's a matter of probably a lack of understanding more than anything else. But I think it's the fact that they were specifically mental health workers that I think there's the trickiness. I mean, we did some focus group stuff about why GPs were much more likely. And I think it's that generalist kind of trusted, they kind of trusted their GP. There's a lack of stigmatization about going to the GP. But generally, GP, I think, was the exception to the rule. The stuff that we found in focus groups is anything associated with healthcare professional completely had a trustworthiness dip. You know, as soon as you bring that idea of their professional healthcare. But the tricky thing is that on the one hand, as soon as you get a healthcare professional like that, they don't really want to speak to them. But on the other hand, if they about youth workers, they don't really want to talk to them as well. It's a really mixed picture. So I sound like I'm saying contradictory things, but the thing that I found in focus groups is when you do actually break it down and ask them, whoever they want to speak to, they want like professional qualifications. They do want to speak to professionals. They don't want to speak to youth workers. They don't want to speak to, like, your local coach who's just, you know, like got a friendly ear. They want to know that the person they're speaking to is qualified to help and doesn't just refer you. So we found very different things to the focus groups to this survey, which is why I think the survey is more about information. You know, maybe if they knew more about CAMHS workers, that would go up, similar to GPs.
Okay. Maybe they say GP as well, because you can just, the initial thing is booking an appointment. So there's no stigma behind it. You could be going to book an appointment for anything. And then when they get in there, that's when they're able, with the door closed, that's when they're able to talk. So that might be it. Whereas CAMHS is like notoriously like red light, there's an issue. So maybe they can disguise it.
Yeah, plus I think, you know, if you go to a young person and ask them, you know, what are CAM workers? I think they'd really struggle to kind of describe it.
They are, who they are.
Yeah, like, you know, they said, you know, are they nurses? Are they doctors? I don't think they're doctors. I think they're nurses. Oh no, I think they've got a qualification in something. It's that lack of kind of security, knowing about their qualifications, that I think differentiates them from GP. GP, doctor, you know it. You know what I mean?
Okay, because what's really interesting in is my experience of, I'm a swimming coach, and the young people are more than likely to approach me with an issue than anyone else. But then your young people who you surveyed, because they've never had that experience of being involved in a sport, that they would never know that coach to athlete, be it whatever level relationship, you know, which is a shame, because it becomes such a quite trusted bond, and you do, you know, you do then signpost and be a listening ear, and you are, yeah, trusted. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing to say on that, I think, you know, there is evidence it works outside. So, you know, employment support through football and things like that. So how much that can be bridged into mental health support, I think there is evidence around it. So, you know.
Okay, thanks for that. I think Matthew's staying around, so if you do have any questions, I think we also go to Catriona, who's been waiting for a little bit, their presentation. So Catriona, you're able to share your screen, your presentation?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really happy to say that Parminder's been able to join as well today, who works for Cherish Hounslow. If I share the screen, Parminder, are you happy to?
I was happy to share it.
Okay.
Yes, I think I can. Bear with me. There we go. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Let me just. There we go. Can people see the screen now?
Yeah, it's not in.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to make it a large view, but when I do that, it seems to not show. So oh yes, it does. Okay, fine. So hello everybody. Good morning. Kat and myself, we are representing the Cherish Partnership, which is a partnership between Metro Charity and NAS. And we have a partnership that we have gone live with since April, which is focusing on two population groups in Hounslow: the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities based in Hounslow, and LGBTQ, focusing on mental health and well-being. So just a little bit about who Metro and NAS are, for those of you who aren't familiar with the two organisations. Metro, who Kat works for, is an equality and diversity charity. It's based in Southeast London, but also works across London. The nearest west, other than before Hounslow, is that NAS is in a partnership with a number of other charities like Turning Point and London Friend across Hammersmith and Fulham, Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster. So obviously Hammersmith and Fulham is just next door to Hounslow. So Metro has experience of working west of London as well. And they work across 5 main areas. And there's lots of synergy between our 2 organisations: sexual and reproductive health, community, outreach, mental health and well-being, youth, young people, and HIV support. NAS is an organisation based in Hammersmith, has been around for nearly 30 years. We're coming up to our 30th birthday in October. And we were set up in 1991 to address the needs of Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities affected by the HIV pandemic. So the irony is not lost on us that we were born out of the HIV epidemic back in the early 80s, and we were established in 91 by the late Shivananda Khan. And here we are in 2020/21, finding ourselves in the grips of another pandemic, global pandemic, which again has disproportionately, like HIV, impacted on Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. We, like Metro, work across very similar domains: HIV care and support, sexual health promotion, which includes bloodborne virus screening, so that's HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and we work across clinical services as well. So we offer, well, as I said, bloodborne virus screenings and counselling services. And we do a lot of policy work. We do national policy work and we do global policy work as well. So that's the 2 organisations behind the Cherish Partnership. So why are we doing this work in Hounslow? Well, given the ethnic demographic breakdown of Hounslow, where there is significant minoritized communities of Black ethnicity and Black and brown communities, really, across a number of different wards where there is high representation of these communities. We know that they have all been disproportionately impacted, and I know that that term has been used over and over and over again when we're talking about COVID-19 and the impact of lockdown, but it's a very, it's a reality that has comes with it lots of intersectional issues, lots of sub-issues, and we've highlighted some of them there: bereavement, social isolation, job losses, low confidence, isolation. The level of loss within BAME communities has been unprecedented with this pandemic. I represent an organisation where the level of bereavement amongst staff alone has been something we as an organisation have never experienced in its 30-year history. From board members to senior management to sessional workers. So that is a reality that we are dealing with. And then when you then look to our beneficiaries and the levels of loss experienced amongst our beneficiaries in terms of immediate family, extended family losses, impact on job security, you begin to get a sense of the magnitude of the issues that we're dealing with. And the pandemic has definitely deepened the already acknowledged inequalities that we've been aware of, and the Black Lives Matter movement that has really shone a light since last summer on some of the institutional racism and discussions that have gone on, have been very prevalent, and has generated a lot of conversation and has shone a light on the experiences, the lived experiences of some of our communities in the way that it hasn't done before. So our program is about looking at how we might contribute, and that's what it is. It's a contribution to that acknowledgement about how we can process some of that trauma. What do we do? How do we hold that lived experience? And how do we triage it? And how do we identify support for the issues identified? So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Kat to talk about what it is in a tangible way that we are doing.
Thanks, Parminder. So yeah, there's a couple of different strands to the project. One of the things we're in the process of setting up is a mental health and wellbeing sort of support group within the borough. So at the moment we're running this online, but hoping to get a space in Hounslow soon. And one of the groups we're going to set up is an LGBTQ drop-in, because this is something we've realised is really missing within the borough. There's a real sort of lack of venues and spaces for the LGBT community. We're also providing some structured groups. So we've got a few different sessions of mindfulness and also dance workshops that we're running, some of which have a focus on supporting BAME residents, and then others will have more of an LGBTQ focus. We're providing one-to-one advice and advocacy as well. And that's what my role is so being able to offer sort of advice and support to residents with things like benefit issues or housing or accessing health services or giving signposting for immigration. And I think that's something that we normally see often when people get sort of a crisis period with their mental health. It can be related to really tangible things like struggling with finances or accommodation. We're providing counselling as well, which has a sort of focus on supporting people around the BAME LGBT intersection, and that's free counselling provided through NAS. And then we're also providing awareness training for Hounslow organisations. So if there's any organisations in the borough that would be interested in learning a bit more about some of the issues that affect BAME communities and also LGBT communities, that's something that we can come and deliver.
Thank you, Kat. So just to give you an idea, the intervention is very localized, it's very specific, as you can see from our service offer. For example, we do offer free counselling, so people can make referrals to NAS, where we are offering one-to-one counselling. We also offer couple counselling as well. So all sorts of issues are coming up as of working over an extended period of time, homeschooling, working from home. So lots and lots of different issues are coming up. So NAS does offer free counselling. So if anybody on this call or wants to disseminate some of this information, please go ahead. Happy to share my email, and if anybody wants to ask anything specific, then they can drop me a line as well. Kat's already spoken about some of the interventions that we've been launching already. So we've just completed our first cycle of mindfulness course, which we're hoping to run later on in the year as well. And this was specifically for Hounslow LGBTQ residents. I'm not sure if all of you on the call know, but there isn't a designated venue or structured service for LGBTQ people exclusively for Hounslow, and so not that I'm aware of. And so what Metro last week, I think they've just held a forum for LGBTQ identified residents of Hounslow, and that was attended by, I think, 15 residents inputting on what it is that they would like to see in the borough. The mindfulness course that we ran was really successful, and we've had great feedback. And one of the things that people have said about the course was that it was a space that people could bring, and this is a direct quote, I could bring all of myself to this intervention. So if they were BAME, if they were LGBTQ identified, and what was coming up for some people, it was quite an emotional experience, was that there were very few places in their lives where they could show up as all of their identities and not just have to compartmentalize or decide which part of them was okay to share and felt safe to share. So that this particular course ended last week, but this week, as of yesterday, we've launched a new mindfulness course, and this one is specific to people of colour in Hounslow. And we've broadened out the who can attend, so it's anybody that works, studies, lives in Hounslow, so we can optimise engagement. And this was a course that was started yesterday and is again running for 6 weeks. And Kat also spoke about our African dance workshops. And this feels like a slightly out of the box intervention for a HIV and sexual health agency. But the reason why we have done this is because of the health and well-being benefits associated with dance, with movement, with physical exercise. And again, we've had really great feedback from the people that have participated in the workshop about being able to connect, being able to engage in a cultural form that is really live and real for people, but also generates good feeling vibes and creates a space where people can come to on a regular basis. And our practitioner is again recruited from the community, and so we have that synergy as well. I would just replace our contact for Kat at Metro is still the same, but for me, I would replace Elaine at NAS with just Parminder at NAS if anybody did want to contact us about any of the services that we offer. That's the service. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. And so would be Kat. I mean, what I didn't say about I kind of gave some rationale to why it was really important that we had this service specifically for Black and Brown communities living and minoritized communities living in Hounslow because of the demographic breakdown of Hounslow. But in terms of LGBT communities, what I didn't say was that what COVID saw back in March 2020, and Matthew has alluded to this, COVID isn't over yet. Every time we think we're going to ease out of COVID just a little bit more, the government guidance suggests that we might, we're pushing back the easing guidance a bit further. So we don't even know come July the 19th what the lie of the land is going to be, as cases are already going up, and are we going to be facing a wave 3? But for LGBT communities, as an organization that does a lot of LGBTQ work in terms of peer support, casework and advocacy, what we've noticed is that all those safe spaces have shut down since March last year. The bars, the clubs, the peer support groups that allow that face-to-face interaction. And whilst there have been lots of upsides around Zoom, in terms of you don't have to go far to connect, and that's been good for those people where traveling has been more challenging, actually, it's not easy for everybody to connect online at home, and having that safe space at home to be able to connect it is a privilege. It's not an automatic, well, that's okay, just log on. Not everybody has the privilege of private spaces, even within a domestic setting. So isolation and lack of scope for that connection is a very real thing, which is why I think the feedback for the LGBT mindfulness course has been really great, which is why we'll be looking to repeat that. So enough from me. I'll hand over to anybody that's got any questions.
I have hello, Parminder. That was great, thank you. Well, first it's a statement, because I've lived here for 42 years. And when I was growing up, I never went out anywhere here because there was nowhere that I would like to go. I didn't feel that there was enough culture, and never in this borough. So having something like a start of, and that like African dance, or somewhere for Black ethnic minorities can actually express themselves. There's loads, if you go more in a city, there's loads and loads of places in the East End, but never in this quarter, this area. So I think that's a fantastic start. So it does make perfect sense. And also it's really not thinking outside the box, because when you're doing that, you're, especially the young people, they have a connection with their heritage that they may not have had or haven't had an opportunity. And that also then evokes some conversations with parents and grandparents who may be used to do that, or not, particularly the grandparents. So it just brings that cohesiveness within family network, and also then the wider network. So that just makes perfect sense. So I've been attending these groups like probably since they've started, and spoke to a number of organisations, and it may be worth thinking about that. What has come up quite well is that some of the groups are interested in like taster sessions for their, like for instance, for their women only. So I'm in the middle of doing like a swimming taster session, and that might be an avenue that you might want to explore for any of your members, that they have, just so they have opportunities to explore new things, because they don't know if they like something because they've never had an opportunity to do it. So if they have do a series of taster sessions on a few things, then they have a really broad-based opportunity, don't they, to know their likes and dislikes, and then from your point of view, you would then be able to say, oh, this worked really well from a monitoring point of view, that worked, and then whether you could put in one more of that or less of this. And so that was just a suggestion.
Lisa, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and it's something that we've already been thinking about. I am very mindful of the fact that neither Metro or NAS, albeit that we're just next door in the neighbouring borough, we're not based in Hounslow. And I think that it is a very challenging ask to ask a population group, and I'm being very generalized in my description. I mean, it's a significant size when we're talking about BAME communities in Hounslow, where there is not the track record to suddenly rock up to a group that is brand new. And so I think building that trust and rapport in a very finite amount of time is a tall order, and we're talking 12 months here. So my ask to the groups here is that what Lisa has just suggested is a fantastic way of building that trust and bridging that gap, because actually as organizational representatives, you are the ones that have those connections and that trusted relationship. So Cherish would be more than happy to come in to your spaces with our practitioners and say, let us offer a little taster session for your user group. They know you, they trust you, they receive communications from you. We can come into your space and offer something that they may not have previously had access to. And then they can make a decision about whether this feels good and interesting and safe, and whether it's nourishing and useful for them to explore further. And I think that that would be a really good way of cascading these interventions to a wider group of people. So if there's anybody here on the call that think actually our membership could really benefit from some of this work, then let us know, drop us a line. We are very flexible in our approach. We've got 9 more months to develop this work. And our focus is really about reaching as many people as possible. We know what the stats say. We know what they say in terms of the impact of COVID. We know that in terms of self-harm, suicide ideation, trauma, we know that Black, Asian, and minority communities are disproportionately represented in those areas. And we know that goes the same for young people as well, young people of color. So we know that the risk is already evidenced there. So creating and carving out these safe spaces that might develop into other conversations. We've already seen this happen with the mindfulness course. People come accessing, wanting to learn a bit more about mindfulness, but what ends up happening in the chat function, what ends up happening in the follow-up conversations is disclosure about other fundamental issues that has led to referrals, counseling referrals, and referrals to other services. So I'm happy to take that suggestion forward, Lisa.
Hi, Parminder. It's Sharanjit Bala here from Sunshine of Hounslow. Brilliant. The work you're doing is really rewarding. Brilliant, how you are presenting so many different services to the Hounslow area. Just to let you know, we also have a disability community allotment, which can be useful for your mindful project. You can use the space, and any time is open to the communities on Saturday. But if you want to use any other days, we can let you use the space. It's a purpose-built disability community allotment with a disabled toilet as well. And there's a fencing all around the allotment, so nobody from the outside can enter, while anybody, even vulnerable people, are inside the allotment. And we have about 25 to 30 raised beds. People can sit around. We have about 80 to 90 chairs to sit around as well. So, wow. Yeah.
And where is that based, Sharanjit?
This is Cranford, Way Avenue, Cranford.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
I'll pop in my details in the chat box, then we can share the information together, which is nice because we are also working for BAME communities as well. We do deliver yoga sessions, cooking, Asian cooking sessions, and art and craft club. Also, allotment every Saturday is at 12 till 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I'll pop the information in the chat box.
We are great believers of agriculture, horticultural therapies, and we've used those kind of what we regard as therapeutic interventions, really, with people living with HIV, and it's been enormously successful. So we're really keen to connect with you.
Yeah, I've noticed when people come to the allotment, by the time they go home, their mind is fully clear about all the stress they came with, and it keeps them busy. There's a lot of work they can get involved with. Growing food from the seed is something nice to look at every week. What you put the seed in, what you're growing, and what's the outcome. There are so many people, but they come and then they take some food at home, something they work for, and they take something away as well. It's a community allotment. So I think it'll be ideal for you, for your mindful project.
Okay. If you could put your details in the chat, I would love to speak more with you about it.
Definitely.
Sounds a brilliant project.
Thank you. I'll do that now.
Thank you. Phil.
Hi, nice to speak to you. I know being based in Hammersmith and Fulham, our organisations have worked together in the past and referred volunteers and other things. I just wondered, one of the issues we've found, especially with digital issues and other issues, is safe spaces and people being able to contact organisations or not feeling they can because they're never in a room alone, or they're always being overheard, or like me, they've got builders outside at the moment, so apologies for that.
Okay.
But how have you dealt with that, and what kind of ways round have you found to kind of engage with people and support people in that way?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the majority of our work has been online, although when the government allowed us to, in those brief opportunities of lockdown easing, we have a reflexology service. So we've been doing some face-to-face work, but we've been doing a lot of outreach work and emergency food distribution throughout since March last year. We've been working with asylum seekers in hotels across London, doing vaccination and COVID work as well. Our counselling has been online, so that's how we've connected with people. For those people that really haven't been able to, because of digital access, it's not been something that they've been able to do. We've had a few appointments where people can come into the office. So that's the main way that we've done it. We've not been able to run any of our peer support groups face to face, mainly because of the amount of social distancing that would be required. It hasn't been achievable.
Right, fair enough.
But as we come out, these are some of the things that, people are able to email us. We do respond fairly quickly to email, link people into assessments, and do the triage online.
Right, brilliant. I'm also, with a slightly different hat, I'm doing some work for the GLA around talking to people who've been providing mutual aid support. I don't know who I could talk to in your organisation about that, to maybe get some of your experiences.
I think if you drop us a line and tell us specifically what it is that you're looking at, Kat and I, one of us can get back to you and see if there's somebody that we could identify.
I'll do that today. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I'll put my details in.
Oops. I'm trying to put my hand down.
just, you know, while we're just busy there, I wonder if I could just mention, Katriana and Parminder, you mentioned quite a few really amazing activities, and I've actually seen them promoted online. But at the same time, I just wondered if everyone was aware that the EHCVS have a community calendar, and you're welcome to send your activities through to us to put onto the calendar. So, you know, we're happy because we're quite well connected to a number of the community and voluntary sector organizations. How many is it, Ian? 400, 500?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably about 600 in house, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'd really encourage people to make use of the community calendar on our website as well. And we can always put a link directly on there to your activity so that people can then connect directly to you if you would like that. Yeah. And of course, it's open to anyone. How would
we go about doing that? Do we just email you directly?
Oh, absolutely. So you can email us direct, or if I quickly just show you the screen. So here is our calendar, our website. On the top right-hand corner is the community calendar. All you need to do is email to events@EHCVS, or you could email to myself or to Ian. So our email addresses are jane@EHCVS or Ian@EHCVS, and we'll get those activities on there for you.
That sounds amazing. We'll do that immediately.
Yeah, I think it's well worth publicizing them as much as possible. And if you do have an activity happening as well, we're very happy to share it through our own network, either tweet it or put it online or send it out on one of our newsletters. Yeah. Has anybody got anything else to ask?
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Just want to let you know, we have on the 10th of July, we have a festival, community festival at Way Avenue. I think I have sent you a flyer as well, and Noika and Ian as well.
Yes, that's been publicized.
Yeah, Ian also is very good. He, responds straight away, very quick. So I'm quite sure it will be advertised and it'll be well presented. Hopefully many people will come and join us with the social distance as well, because it's an open space. And this is our first community event. So hopefully we will be able to gain more people to join the together in the community and get together in the community as well and make a most out of the day.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, this network has been running for the past 6 months, so we got some particular funding for this network. So obviously we are looking at continuation, applying for further funding to keep it going. So it'd be good to hear any feedback about how the benefits of the network that you've experienced that we can take forward for future sort of funding applications. We have sort of discussed this in past meetings.
Okay. It's always so good to see the work that's happening and really making a difference. I must say that Matthew's discussion earlier was so interesting as well. So it would be good to have everyone's contact details and to share those out. Of course, the video for the session is available as well. And if you would like to access that, you're welcome to.
So you can put any comments you want in the chat, or any feedback you want to put back. I've also put a feedback form link in the chat. You can put feedback in there as well.
Okay. Yeah, please do complete the feedback if you can. That's always helpful for us. Well, as you know, every project needs the feedback. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, we'll circulate the slides. I think we've got. I'm not sure. Parminder, have you sent your slides to?
Yes.
Yoko, or?
Yeah, they have been sent.
Yeah, so we'll circulate the slides to people, and a link to the report. I think Matthew's report will be sent to people as well. And yeah, thanks for attending. And I'd say we've got a few more of these sessions left, so we'll publicise them in the coming weeks.
And of course, if you want to have another opportunity to talk, please do speak to Ian, because he still runs the Voice Network on a Wednesday, and there are opportunities there to present different topics over the coming months. So although this network is coming to an end, there will still be a space for the community to meet on an ongoing basis. And we have various speakers in, and that's arranged all through Ian.
Yeah, so these are promoted in the e-news. So if you want to receive the e-news, pounds of e-news, just let them be produced and get in touch with me.
Thank you, everyone.
Jane,
Great, thanks very much.
Jane, I think the feedback is working.
What? Sorry,